welcome to this We Got 1 Week to Go edition of the Purple Journal podcast. I am your host, extraordinaire, in air quotes, Joe Johnson, owner of purplePTSD.com and an ever-expanding network of Vikings-related media. Here with my BFFs, Mr. Joe Oberly.
Howdy.
Hey. He writes for purplePTSD.com and thesportspost.com. And also, as always, last but not first. That's not what I meant, but I guess
least.
What? Yeah.
Sticks, you really stuck the dismount there. Well done.
The truth comes out. How you doing, man?
Doing all right.
Luke Braun is his name.
Yes.
I have one of those. One of them names.
That's a German name, isn't it?
Yeah. Man, I'm ready for football to be back. I found myself scrolling through Game Pass looking for like random regular season non-Vikings games to watch just because I miss football.
I don't know if it's because I personally, just because the site's getting bigger and the work we're doing is more intensive, but this offseason has been like a bear. And it's just
been interesting. Recently is there's all kinds of people getting arrested and none of them are wearing purple, which is awesome.
Ezekiel Elliott's falling apart.
And then you got a guy from the Texans, and you got a guy from another one, and it's
got arrested on the Texans.
Can't remember his name. And then there's a third guy, and it's like every other day someone's in the police blotter, and it hasn't been any Vikings, which is really good news.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
Mike Williams.
What we have to.
Sorry.
I was just going to say that the bar is so low that it's like, hey, no one got arrested. Topic number one, hooray! You know, it's the NFL, man. I'm telling you, the coaches must. I can see why these guys die young. Like, it's what a you get paid millions of dollars, obviously, but what a thankless job.
I suppose we have to include Michael Floyd in that, though. He wasn't arrested, but he was sent to jail for a day.
Yeah, that's true, and that's been
an extra day.
Yeah, an extra day.
If not for that, I mean, that's been kind of the overarching story for the past month. And Zimmer came out this past week and said that he told the media basically that he told Floyd that if he finds out, I don't know if he's got like a crack team of investigators looking through Kyle Rudolph's garbage can or anything, but if he finds out that he's lying about the T thing, that he'll cut him. I don't know how that would end up if they're, if he's just doing that to cover the fact that there was a kind of a negative backlash to the fact that the Vikings kind of supported Floyd, since the math didn't really add up, and it doesn't make any sense that he actually did that.
I heard Mueller was looking into it.
Jesus.
Yeah. Just kidding.
Did Michael Floyd ever meet with a Russian ambassador?
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is, too, he got suspended for 4 games, so that's out, and, which suddenly doesn't make the loss of it diminishes the loss of him if he doesn't make the team, if he and it gives him, they're going to be watching him very closely, and it gives him it makes it easier politically to say, see ya,
Yeah. What is your guys'
Can you guys clarify something for me on this suspension? Is that for the original DUI, or is that for the combination of the DUI and the treatment violation? Because the NFL has gone real strict on treatment violations before. Like, I think of like Josh Gordon, and like if you're like a repeat offender and stuff, which Michael Floyd is. So is there another suspension, like additional weeks coming? I feel like there is.
I thought that what I've read is that typically it's for a DUI, it's 2 games. And then they kind of just tacked on these other 2 because of his blowing the probation. But that is stuff in the NFL.
The DUI was part of it.
Yeah, I thought it was like the severity of it because he blew over whatever the law was in Arizona.
Like I said, I didn't get that from the NFL. That's just what some speculation has been. So I don't know.
Yeah, because I felt like when he violated it, that I thought he was entering Josh Gordon territory, personally. Like, I thought it was going to be a year. So 4 games to me seems like, and maybe I'm just assuming this because I do want Michael Floyd to work out on like a personal and a professional level, but a lot of people are saying that, it's 4 games, he hasn't played for the team before, why would you keep him on the roster, cut him? The narrative I wanted to ask you guys about was that people are saying that Floyd was brought in as insurance for Treadwell, whether or not Treadwell would work out, so him being on the team after the 4 games hinges on Treadwell's development. Not that I personally think there's a lot of overlap. They're the same size. They're physical receivers, but I don't see Treadwell being the guy that I envisioned Floyd was brought in to be. So I don't. Right. I guess my question is, a lot of people are saying, well, he's cut him. He's done. There's no way he makes the roster with all these other receivers we brought in, drafted, free agents, whatever. But my assumption was the Vikings brought him in knowing he was going to be suspended for at least 4 games. So why would they cut him if they brought him in anyway?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, they knew that he would have, 2 to 4 games. They knew that they wouldn't have him and that they'd have some, temporary little roster spot. That means, Stacey Coley gets to be on the active roster for 4 games or whatever.
Mobo.
But I think, Mobo. But I think if you get more added to it because of the treatment, because of the violation, and you're talking, now it's going to be 8 or 10 games, then I think you have to think about, well, if we're going to have somebody on the active roster for 8 games, is it really worth switching to Floyd, who hasn't been active for this long, or do we just keep the guy that we had on the active roster the entire time and just cut ties with this whole headache? Then I think you have to think about it. But yeah, there's a point where they knew they would, for some small portion of the beginning of the season, they wouldn't have Michael Floyd, and that would give, a guy like Treadwell the ability to win a spot. But remember, through OTAs, for as little as OTAs mean, Treadwell was handily winning this position battle. So that might also factor into it, the way that with all the positive press coming out about him, if he was like, he's insurance just in case Treadwell works out, and then just in case Treadwell doesn't work out, and then if they are confident in him with what they start seeing in training camp, that could affect Floyd's status, completely outside of his hands.
Yeah. I think he could end up not being as big of a factor, but they'd still probably bring him in. But if Treadwell is a beast, and we have 3 receivers who are tearing it up by week 5, I don't. Might just be a moot point at that point, I guess. But I don't know, man. I just think Floyd. The idea of it excites me, like having a big physical down the field guy that maybe he only gets X amount of snaps per game. It's not like he's going to be a feature, but it's something we didn't have last year for multiple reasons. So, who knows, but 4 weeks, him, I was just going to say 4 weeks with him left to his own devices scares me also. So, who knows if he'll even make it that far.
Yeah, they just serve too much kombucha tea over at Rudy's house. That's the problem.
I realized that I was spelling it wrong the entire time. I was writing articles with kombucha gate and story of purple PTSD. Typos everywhere. So we have, before we do the show, a little bit of a peek for our listeners into how the show works. We obviously talk about what topics to cover, and I completely realized when you guys were talking that I didn't include the fact that Teddy's been like a Instagram monster. He reminds me of Aaron Paul or those annoying YouTube people in regards to his social media use lately. He's been posting some
Did you
pictures.
say Aaron Paul? That's Jesse from Breaking Bad.
Oh, yeah. Well, I hate him too.
That's actually what he was talking about.
Science.
That's the only Aaron Paul I know.
Yeah,
I haven't talked about him. What is he up to?
What is He's got a show on Netflix, I think. But what is the? It doesn't matter. But who am I talking about?
Logan Paul or Jake Paul? Jake Paul. Viner guys?
Yeah, Jake Paul.
Yeah.
Dabbing on him. All right, sorry, I'm getting old, man. Anyway, the point was.
I didn't know about it either, so.
Speaking of looking into the background of how the show works, Jesus. Yeah, Teddy's been posting pictures, and people all of a sudden I can feel. It's inevitable that the Teddy versus Bradford thing is going to come up, but I don't really see how 2 pictures of him, one at the beginning and one at the end of him doing a 5 or 7 step drop means he's going to be like in camp full time fighting for his spot, but people want him to come back. There's an emotional aspect to it. He obviously said something like he's getting mentally and physically prepared for camp, so that kind of poured some gas on that fire too. And you have to look at it from Teddy's perspective. I mean, he's lost his starting position basically because of an injury, and that sucks, and he's driven and he wants to come back as quickly as possible. I'm sure deep down he's not the happiest guy that Bradford's doing well or whatever, but what do you guys feel like in regards to camp starting next week? Like, what is your expectation for Teddy coming into it? Is he going to be on the sidelines, like, rehabbing, or do you think he'll actually be out there, like...
Trump will be out of office before Teddy takes the field. No, I'm just kidding.
That's a great take.
That's a good
That's
title.
such a good over-under. Oh, my God.
You know, I don't think Teddy... I think he's going to... You know, what they did with him at OTAs, you probably already know, is, I mean, he'd go in there, he'd throw the ball for the media as they watched it during warm-ups. You know, you'd have someone snapping the ball, and they'd run patterns downfield, and he'd throw them the ball. And as soon as, you know, 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 started, he was out of there watching and for the rest of practice. And I think that's what you're going to see in camp, and that they eventually will put him on the PUP list or the IR or whatever for the season so that they can get another quarterback who's healthy, have 3 quarterbacks on the roster, and then they'll figure it out at the end of the year. But I'm not saying I'm wishing for that, but I think that's what will happen. I think that's what's smart to do because it's a devastating injury and one that so few people have either come back from or B even had that.
Yeah.
There's so much unknown, you know. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, I wrote an article the other day saying like people need to pump the brakes on the Teddy thing because even on Reddit, which I feel used to have the reputation of kind of sniffing out this kind of hyperbolic nonsense, external of the Teddy conversation, Reddit loves Teddy, and so anything Teddy related gets blown out of proportion. But I was seeing people say stuff like, let's have Teddy be the symbolic backup. You know, you only need 2 quarterbacks, so bring him into the game, suit him up. It's like a symbol of what? Like, it didn't make any sense. Like, why would you have a injured quarterback as your symbolic number 2? That would never happen.
They would never give up a game day roster spot like that.
Yeah, because then if Sam gets hurt and you have to like risk putting your guy out before, that'd be ridiculously dumb.
It makes sense on no levels. I mean, you get 53 spots and there's always compromises, but yeah, I felt like it was getting the hype with Teddy was getting kind of the point where we needed to address it a little bit. And I know I'm not the most pro Teddy guy out there, I guess, but I guess yeah, I wanted to see what you guys thought and if he was going to be back
like
sooner or what.
There's 2 things I want to say here. I think the entire situation between Sam and Teddy has not changed since the moment we traded for Sam. This is Sam's team until it isn't. And right now, Sam Bradford has the job. And there's no question about that. And nobody's arguing that Teddy will have to take it back from Sam. It's a question of whether he can do that. And lucky for us, we get to see it all play out live whenever Teddy comes back and then there's a position battle and yay. I don't think we need to sit here and go, well, you know, if Teddy's healthy, do you just throw him in? No, he's got to take the job back. And in my opinion, I think he can. If he comes back healthy enough, I think he's capable of doing that. But he has to do it. And I don't think I don't think that's very controversial. I think everybody knows that he has to prove it. And I think we're all just wondering whether or not he can.
I listened to Brian Murphy from the St. Paul Pioneer Press talking. He spent some time with Zimmer recently down on his ranch in Kentucky, and he was saying Zimmer was telling him how he's been spending a lot of time in Oklahoma just hanging out with Bradford because he didn't get to do that. He came in the week before the season and didn't have any time to really get to know each other and get to talk football and philosophy and all those things. So he's been spending some time doing that, and all signs are like Luke just said, it's his team, and I actually think you have to extend Bradford. I don't know how long you do, but I think you extend him.
That was my question.
Yeah, you got to do that, and then when it comes time, you make a decision. You know, by the end of the year, you'll know what you can expect from Teddy maybe going forward, and then you make your decision there. But I figure maybe at least 2 years for Bradford, maybe 3 years. Not a huge one. Hopefully, he wouldn't hold up. That one.
Do you think they do that this year, or do you think that I was going to ask essentially with Bradford only being under contract through this year, that they're kind of in a wait and see mode?
I don't think so. And in fact, I kind of went back and forth with someone online about that, thinking, Spielman has a habit of doing this, getting these things done so that his players can go into camp with a clear brain, and this distraction aside, it worked really well for Blair Walsh, by the way. But he has a habit of doing it, and I think he'll look to do that. I would think Bradford would want to, and I think it's a good signal to send to him that, okay, we're going to extend you here, and I know Teddy's looking over your shoulder, but he's got a ways to go, so let's go forward. And you get the best out of him this season, and then at the end of the year, you take a look at it and reevaluate. That's what I think.
Yeah, if they were going to do it this year, I think they would have done it by now. I agree with that. I want to point out there's a funny Teddy video. There's an Instagram video that he posted of him. He was just working out, and everybody freaked out because he was like doing pocket movements without a brace.
Yeah.
Which is great news, which is awesome. And Luke Inman tweeted it out, and in the replies to that, one of the doctors, I forget which doctor, but they're like one of the Twitter, the people that like will chime in on every sports injury and be like, well, I think it's this, and that's usually this kind of recovery. It's usually really helpful information. Yeah. Was like complaining about how the video was sped up. And which is hilarious to me because I'm an editor and I work with time stretching quite often, and it definitely was not sped up. And I realized that, like, oh, this guy's just a hater.
What would that have
like he's just literally making things up?
Would that have made it so you wouldn't have noticed like imperfections in his movement better? Or what would be the point of it? Just
make him look more nimble. I don't know. Also, like if it was sped up, like that would be a very like there are ways to speed things up like that and make it look a little bit better, but it takes tools that like professionals use and usually won't do for you for free. So like, why would you come on? Like if you're gonna try to hate on a guy so hard, like come up with a better thing than just like making up that the video is doctored.
Well, that's not the first time that a doctor has come out and talked about Teddy and essentially said his career is over. I've never met him and I've never really.
I can still see him extending Bradford right before camp, though. I mean, they've done that, and they've announced it the first week, and just to take all the attention that way, and give other players. I don't know. It's been happened several times where they've extended somebody that first week of camp and gives everybody a storyline to chase and really takes pressure off other people. I don't know. I could see him do it.
Happened mid-season too.
It makes sense because if Teddy's on the IR, they push back his contract extension. And they've done semi-quietly. I don't think people are giving Bradford enough credit, but I think the organization has shown that they are like tripling down on the Bradford move by building this offense around him, having Pat Shurmur take over as the offensive coordinator. Granted, Norv Turner left, but maybe that's because he was resentful of Shurmur's increased influence. But basically the offense is built around Bradford right now. I think they brought in Michael Floyd because Bradford needed a guy of that skill set that they could take advantage of down the field. So the team is basically Bradford's team right now, and it's that way because he earned it. I mean, he had an amazing 2016, and I just feel like even though I end up essentially stating an opinion on the Teddy versus Bradford thing when that's the last thing I want to do, I do feel like people are underestimating Bradford and not giving him enough credit in regards to what he accomplished last season and what he's going to accomplish this year if he stays healthy. I think the offense is prime.
He's a hater, Luke. He's a Bridgewater hater.
Totally. And I haven't analyzed Bridgewater
I don't
or
disagree.
anything, but I think he's going to die of natural causes sometime this summer. Tweet it out.
I mean, I've been really vocal about this all offseason that I think, when you go 8-8, I think you find problems where there really aren't problems. You're trying to find something to blame, and you want to find a concrete thing that you can say, see, that was the issue. Let's fix it by removing that cancer from the – and football doesn't work that way, especially in a 16-game season. So I definitely agree with you that I think people ascribe more blame to Bradford for things that really were not his fault. And that's not to say that there weren't issues or that the things that people talk about aren't issues, but they're not nearly as detrimental as people make them out to be,
It's, to me, that's just what – I know it's hard to – like you said, there's so many working variables, but it's kind of obvious what happened last season with.
Yeah, we've overthought this.
I don't know. I think Bradford was like the only net positive on that offense last year.
what he did behind that offensive line last year does not get enough credit. He was he did great things behind there, and it's even going to be better this year if you have running backs that can block for him and an offensive line that can block for him and can catch passes out of the backfield. I mean, it opens this offense up a little bit. I think if you keep the guy healthy, he's going to have a really good season.
So speaking of opening up the offense, both of you guys have been doing kind of dual position battle stuff coming before training camp, essentially just analyzing each position. And
we've been battling Joe. We've been battling each other on takes.
It's been
sure, yeah.
There's icy tension is the word I'm looking for.
Right.
So this week you guys both touched on the receiving positions. As a general thing in regards to Joe's article with receivers and tight ends, and Luke covered tight ends as well. And we talked about wide receivers on the last show because that's basically the only thing I'm interested in ever. But in regards to tight ends, like, I'm really excited to see what you guys thought about what's going on there with essentially Bucky Hodges, I guess, is my most exciting X factor, since he's kind of a athletic freak who could be unstoppable, especially in the red zone. So what is your, I guess, starting with Luke, what was your analysis there just in general?
I think, my article's a lot more about like backstory and stuff. But what I did not know before doing this article is that Bucky Hodges used to play quarterback, and that's fun. And I think that actually paints a little bit of that kind of sheds a little light on like why Bucky Hodges is not, if he's like so athletically incredible and he's like such an explosive, why he fell to the 6th round. Because he's raw as hell. His catching, his catch. Oh, are we?
That's Bucky.
Yep.
That's you're Bucky in a cage. Is that? Don't do that. But no, so his like catch technique is really raw. He has, he's had a lot of scouts have knocked him for his ability to like adjust to the balls, and there's some drops, but it's more of like a contested catch thing in his routes. So he's got a lot to learn. So I don't think he's going to like step in week one. In college, I think it was like his first year or two of college, he was a quarterback, and then they moved him to tight end. And it worked out great, and he turned into a really, really good, a really important weapon for Virginia Tech. But when you get to the NFL level, all the little things that you learn over, middle school and high school, and then all the way through college, like that all starts to matter a lot more. And it's not to say that he can't learn it. This kind of thing has worked out for players in the past. But I think we just have to make sure we pump the brakes a little bit and get, patient. That said, his competition in the rest of the room, he's like very clearly the third best tight end in the room, unless you like really believe in Nick Truesdell.
Yeah, and I think Nick Truesdell's a little bit old and might get passed by, but I think Bucky's got it. Pardon me?
There's not much to Truesdell.
Yeah, I think Bucky is got a potential to be one of Zimmer's kinds of guys who's just going to be hardworking and grinding it out and doing whatever he can and learning. I mean, if he's a quarterback, he's got a capability to learn some different things, and he can make himself versatile as you can as a tight end, and I think he's got a chance to stick that way. And the two guys ahead of him are set, obviously, with Rudy and Morgan. Yeah, and I hope Morgan stays healthy, because I thought he was just starting to come into his own when he got hurt last year. So I think they're in good stead. They've got a number of people there. It should be a nice little competition to watch. But I think Luke's right. It's pretty set up for at least the top three.
So I'm reading about Hodges, and it says he was 6'5" as a freshman, and he focused on increasing his speed. He lowered his 40-yard dash time from 5.3 seconds to 4.6.
What?
Wow.
As a freshman. Like, to me, that just reads like he must be insanely physically gifted. That's insane. So hopefully he's a quick learner. I mean, that would just be something.
Yeah.
I wanted this offense to run two tight end sets that aren't just because we need extra blockers. I think that would open things up a lot.
Well, then we'd have to hire back what's his name, Norv again. So.
Yeah.
Sorry, just kidding.
I know, that's what I was thinking too, kind of. But I guess when it comes to the receivers, have we talked about who we think is going to make the final 5 or 6 spots before? I think we have.
Yeah, we talked about that last time. Can I throw out a hot tight end take?
Yes.
No.
I think at some point throughout the season, not come week 1, but at some point throughout the season due to like injury or whatever, Josiah Price touches the active roster.
Ooh.
I think so. There's only 3 guys really contending for the practice squad at tight end. One of them's Kyle Carter, who had it last year, but he is very, very low ceiling kind of guy. He's had a really inconsistent college career, and he made it as an undrafted free agent, kind of sat on the practice squad, but he doesn't seem like there's really a lot of room for growth with him. He's just kind of there. Nick Truesdell his story is awesome. If you check out the Camp Battle tight end thing to see a lot of his journey through indoor football and a bunch of attempts to make NFL teams. I don't think this is going to be magically the one where he makes an NFL team. And Josiah Price, I think, would have been had the ability to get drafted had he been invited to the combine.
Yeah.
But he was not invited to the combine, and every year there's a number of people that probably should have been but weren't. But there's just only so much room. And he's a very easy guy to root for. His story's pretty good too. So. I think he if I had to pick someone to make that practice squad role, it'd be Josiah Price. And I think at some point, due to injury or whatever, somebody comes in, I think you could end up with Josiah Price on the active roster because we just need the extra tight end depth this week or whatever.
I agree. I thought at that end it's going to be a really good battle just to see who gets that deep backup position and does make the practice squad. And I thought it was between.
Something to keep you entertained in the back end of preseason games.
That's right. Gives reporters something to write about, I guess.
Joe, you touched on this in your article a little bit, and obviously Luke, you've talked about this too, and we've talked about it on the show. But I guess my question is, what do you guys think about Fricty making the final roster, since he seems to be the guy that a lot of people don't include on their 6-person list?
What? I'm trying to remember what I said, but I thought he
You said that he finally cracked the game day roster last season. Basically.
Right. He did, and I don't know if that was due more to injury or what, but or maybe it was that the last game of the year when they were just putting deeper people into the games. I can't remember, but I think he's always done enough to keep himself around, to bounce back and forth between the practice squad and the game day squad, and I think there's an opportunity for him to do it again. He's good enough. He's not great. I think they're deep. If Treadwell is great and or has a good season this year, which I really think he could, I'm hoping for him to have a breakout year and really believing that was injury problems last year. I'm hoping that's the case and really turn that around. I think the guys that might be on the bubble are, the guys got to, if that happens with Treadwell, then I think he might even take some reps away from Jarius Wright, and I think Mobile might be on the way out unless he really makes a big leap this year. I'm not sure, so I still think Freaky hangs around.
Have you ever seen in your years of covering the team and being alive and writing about the Civil War from a first-person perspective, something where Treadwell came out and basically said that he asked to be put on the IR last year, but the team didn't let him? Has that ever happened before? And what does that? What do you guys interpret that as meaning?
That's rumored, by the way. That's not confirmed. That's just that's a hashtag sources deal.
Okay. Because I've never heard of that before.
It certainly, if it's true, it explains why the guy only got three targets and one reception last year. I don't know if he was in the doghouse or what, but yes, that's as strange a thing as I've ever seen. I mean, generally, I guess you could go back to last year, and there was kind of a few things where Zimmer was barking about players who we thought either were hurt and not putting out enough, and so it could align with that. narrative. I have never heard of that specific kind of case in all my years as a writer. But I can't put it past what went on kind of behind the scenes last year with Zimmer and some of his players, Anthony Barr and some of the other ones. So who knows?
That's just so weird to me. I don't know. Well, speaking of all your years, you're a born and bred Mankato guy, and I was alluding to Luke's German ancestry because Joe told me off air that he's discovered his ancestral home in Germany, and he's gonna go over there, which is something I'm super jealous of because I have no idea where I'm from or why I exist. But I bring that up just because Mankato, it was announced officially that Mankato is this is the last year that training camp's going to be down there, which a lot of people aren't happy about. I'm sure the city of Mankato isn't happy about it. We talked about that a little bit last week, but since people are kind of reminiscing on their trips to Mankato every year, I thought we could touch on that. And Joe, since you grew up there, obviously you have the best perspective on it. But
I got a couple stories, I guess, and obviously, like I said last week, it's sorry to see it go, but it's totally understandable when the NFL as it is these days. So there's all that. But when I was a kid, a neighbor 2 doors away was a friend of mine, and he moved to the Twin Cities, and we went up to visit him. And his next door neighbor was Carl Kasulki, and so I'm 6, 7 years old, and Carl Kasulki comes out, the neighbor introduces us to him. So we're out there talking to him. I'm so nervous I shake hands with him left-handed because I am left-handed. But so anyway, we meet him, we talk to him, and then the next year at training camp, I'm looking for him, and I find him and I say to him, "Hey, Mr. Kasulka, do you remember me?" Blah blah blah. And he starts talking to me and stuff, and so I thought that was pretty cool.
Is he was he a player on the team? I've never heard of him.
Oh my goodness, yes, he was a hard-hitting safety that if you go back to some old scenes from back in the day, you can just see him destroying Lions quarterbacks and on safety blitzes. He was nuts. He was crazy. He ended up his career was shortened by a tragic motorcycle accident which paralyzed him from the waist down. Right in the middle of his career.
Man.
But anyway, the next day I'm up there on my bike and I'm just, back then the players after practice was over would walk to the locker room, but they would walk right through the throngs of the crowd. All the people are just standing around milling, and they would, chat with them. It's not segmented off like it is now. And all of a sudden, I'm just sitting on my bike, and I feel these big arms reach around and grab me in a bear hug and lift me off my bike. And I turn around, and it's Kasulki. He had recognized me from the day before, and he gives out this big horse laugh, which he was known for. And he sets me down and goes, "How you doing?" And and I'm just in sky high, and I look around. There's all these kids just looking at me like, "Who are you? How do you know this?" So that was one of my highlights as a kid. Years later, I was sitting behind him at a Vikings game at the Dome, so I went down to talk to him and told him the story and asked him if he remembered me, and he acted like he did. I'm sure he didn't, but he was in a wheelchair at the time. But just a wonderful guy. The other one was I'd like to tell was. I was my next door neighbor was up there. We were up at practice, and he was collecting autographs, and I had never done that before, and didn't have that much interest in it. And anyway, he's running around like crazy, and he says to me, he sees Alan Page over in the Gage Center parking lot. And he says, "Hey, here's a piece of paper and pencil. Go get Alan Page's, for me." And so I said, "What the heck?" So I went over there, and Page is just trying to get into his car and race away, get away from all this. And I caught him just as he was getting in and asked him if he signed. He was just mad. He signs it Al Page, P-A-G. Doesn't even put an E on the end. He was so mad. So I bring it back, and he goes, "Did you get him? Did you get him?" I said, "Yeah, I did." He goes, "Well, give it to me." I said, "The hell with that. I'm not giving you that." And I was, it's after what I went through, because I obviously clearly made one of my heroes angry. But so then I started collecting a few more, and I remember standing in line and or in this big group of people around Bud Grant, and I could just see the look on his face, how it was just like this pained look on his face, that what he had to go through here. And I just kind of backed out of the line and said, "No, I don't want to do this anymore." I still have the piece of paper with Al Peg on it and some of the other ones, but
that's probably worth a fortune.
Yeah, right.
Supreme Court. He's signing like new Supreme Court laws.
Yeah, but I can't tell anybody that they'll take away my press credentials now.
Speaking of press credentials, we got some Purple PTSD, limited ones. I mean, we're gonna be down there. It's the 2nd through the 5th, so the Saturday night scrimmage, which will be amazing. But somehow we stumbled into past credentials, so that'll be pretty cool. But man,
we're legit. We're legit, man.
We're getting there. I grew up in Minneapolis, but I had family down. My dad's family kind of originated down in St. Peter, which is next to Mankato. So every time we go down there, we look at this house that his grandma basically owned and that he semi-grew up in. It's always like an event. It's like, it takes like a good hour and a half to drive down there. And it's like going to a small town, and it feels really accessible. It's gotten less and less so.
Wait till next year.
I know. I mean, God, if you look at the Purple PTSD Facebook page and look at the pictures, there's a bunch of pictures that are really like heavily oxidized. They're actually purple. I was down there in probably, I think it was 1999, and I had my mom's long lens camera, and there was just that chain link fence that's still there, and a little bleachers that are set up there, but there was nothing else. I mean, the bathroom wasn't even unlocked at the time, and there's probably 20 people there. And I got these amazing pictures of Chris Carter kneeling next to Randy Moss and Culpepper, and you can see there it says like Carter, Culpepper, Moss, the back of their jerseys, perfect pictures. The whole time, like, Chris Carter kept nudging Moss and pointing at me, like, why is that kid taking pictures like these? I was just so fixated on them, and I ended up losing the roll of pictures up until probably 2 years ago. My sister developed a bunch of old rolls of film, and that's why they look kind of crappy, but it was just stuff like that, man. It was really, really fun, and like I just remember it as being such a great. Every year, since I remember being alive, I would go down there with my dad, and I've said this multiple times, except for 2005, in a protest for the Randy Moss trade. But I live near the airport, so like the Egan facility is going to be really close for me, and especially if I have like a press pass or whatever, it'll be cool. Like it'll be more convenient, but I don't know. I just like to quote Wayne's World. I guess I fear change. I like the small town aspect of it, and I feel like it's going to get out of control a little bit in regards to. I guess if I have a press pass, it won't matter, but if it's this close to the cities, like how many people that wouldn't make the trip to Mankato are going to go, and how is that going to make it just less special? And
I don't know, it'll be different. It sounds like it's supposed to be state of the art, one of the best facilities in the league when they get it all said and done. So
it should be a whole town, like a whole new city in like 20 years.
Yeah, and you'll be the mayor.
That's the plan.
I only have one training camp memory. I've only been one time down to Mankato, and it was an awesome day. And I never realized like just how intimate of an experience it was. My only experiences before that were like being at games, and you're as high up as you are, and there's big barriers, and it kind of feels like there's a lot between you and the field and what's going on. And in Mankato, it doesn't feel that way, but I do vividly remember, and this was a little while ago, and I don't remember it that well, but I do vividly remember seeing Andre Allison catch a very good pass and getting very excited about his future as a Viking, which is very fun to think about in hindsight.
That must have been around the time that I was protesting it, because those were the dark days, man.
Was he?
When did he get drafted?
I think he was part of the same draft class as Sidney Rice.
Pretty cool, yeah.
No, career start 2007. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he was 2007 to 2008. So.
Andre Allison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, because Tavares Jackson was throwing him the ball.
Yeah. That's and it's funny because before the show started, I was talking about this panic dream that I keep having, where I would have to essentially cover the Vikings every day like I do now with a T-Jack Brad Childress situation. That was the worst period of, Spurgeon win was bad, but we still had Moss, so it was worth watching. But the trifecta of crap that was going on with Childress and T-Jack.
Don't you remember Les Steckel? Crying out loud. That was pretty dark.
That's always the go-to. Whenever I hear somebody be like, "Oh, Mike Tice was the worst Vikings coach," I'm like, that person's young.
Yeah. See, I don't remember.
That person doesn't know.
I was saying something about in my lifetime being born in 1984. I don't remember a situation, something to do with Bradford and Teddy, and they said, well, "What about Tommy Kramer and Tarkenton?" And I don't. I mean, obviously I was an infant, but when did Tommy Kramer play?
He came in for Fran Tarkenton. Remember, he told us at a show that Tarkenton was, or Bud Grant pulled, all of a sudden turned to Kramer on the sidelines and said he's pulling Tarkenton and said, "You're in there." And scared the hell out of him, and he went in.
What, was that in the early 80s, or was that late 70s?
Yeah, it might be late 70s, I think.
So my dad always talks about the darkest period being Gary Quazzo at quarterback, who ended up being an orthodontist at some point. Like, we had an orthodontist as a quarterback.
There was some, they had him and Norm Snead and I think Bob Lee at the time, too. That was a trifecta of really underachieving, underwhelming quarterbacks. But they still had a good defense back then, so they were still competitive. But they were heading south with those guys.
Well, that means, we're in a unique situation having two quarterbacks that are technically under 30.
Technically.
Technically. There's always a technicality.
It's the best quarterback situation we've had here in years. Everybody's freaking out. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? They shouldn't extend him. They shouldn't do that. They should see what happens. They're in a decent position for once. They're not, just freaking out because you look at Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford and Jay Cutler in the same division, and what do we have? We have, it's much better. It's
to me, it feels like a new parents who bring an infant home and make you lather yourself in that foam when you touch the baby. I think Vikings fans don't know how to handle a situation where you have two good quarterbacks. Our default reaction is to panic, at least mine is, so I think people are just worried that it's going to screw up the chemistry or whatever, but I think you're right. I think they're going to extend Bradford. It's not fair to him to kind of say, you got to do it again this year, and then maybe we'll extend you if Teddy's okay.
I don't think it goes any further than they have to, because there's so much uncertainty with Bridgewater. There just is. And until he's on the field proving that he's going to, be able to do it, and the Vikings have a decent enough line to protect him from anything like that happening again, it's a huge question mark, It's such a freak thing.
So we have a little bit of time left, so I'm going to throw out a hypothetical situation. Assuming Teddy comes back, and let's say he's as healthy as he was before, but Bradford's still playing at a high level, so the Vikings obviously kind of have to make a decision. What do you think Teddy could get in regards to a trade?
Ooh.
Right now?
With all his uncertainty, I don't think you could get it. You could be like, I'll trade you for a sixth, and someone would probably do it, but I don't think any sort of realistic deal can happen.
Like Mike Wallace level? Because I was thinking
it'd have to be horrible, because nobody knows if he can be a functioning player or not.
Right.
Well, but I'm saying, assuming that that's a stupid question, I guess, but if he's shown in preseason games that he's healthy and obviously can do it based on his career, do you think that there's just no way? I was thinking, Jay Cutler obviously got 2 first-round picks, but his knee didn't explode. I just keep seeing this narrative, I guess, where people are excited about trade bait and the fact that we can end up getting a ton of.
Ultimately, that's that deal. You have 2 decent quarterbacks, and you can trade one and get something for them. If that's the problem. or else but none of that can even be addressed now until you see what you got, see how healthy he is. You need to put a steel rod in that guy's knee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know. I have such a different angle on it just because I had my foot ankle explosion like 2 days after Teddy got hurt. And, like, granted I'm in horrible shape and I'm probably going to die soon, but I can't walk normal. I can't imagine having my femur regrafted to my knee.
No.
And going out there, like, it's been... He got injured on August 31st, or August 30th of last year, so it's been 11 months. It's gonna be a while, regardless of the Instagram.
I have a question for you guys. Do you think, so say it's week 6, or week 5 or week 6, and Teddy comes to you and he says, hey, I think I'm 100%.
Yep.
Do you have to, could you see the team kind of saying, well, we're going to continue to take it slow with you, just so that they can make sure, or say you're just, he does this right before you decide to put him on the pup.
Yep.
Do you think they'll get sketchy about it?
My thing is, and I wrote about this in the Pump the Brakes article, is that the biggest thing is that the Vikings have a financial motive not to play Teddy, or not to put him on the active roster. It would be a complete waste of a year of his rookie contract to have him come in as a backup halfway through the season. So I guess the nightmare scenario would be if he, and I kind of feel like it could be building towards this, not necessarily that it is building towards it, but with the stuff he's been doing on social media and hanging out with Devontae Parker, he's showing and saying stuff to the media like I'm getting physically and mentally prepared. Like he's showing that he wants to come back, which is a good thing. But you don't want to get into a situation where the team has that financial motive and they're using that to override his wants and needs and I guess reality.
I still see the ultimate player though that I don't see him muddying those waters and coming in and saying, hey, I'm ready, you got to put me in, or blah blah blah, this is my team, or anything that screams Teddy. I just see, I mean, the other point of the fact is the guy was laying on his field with his bottom half of his legs separated. He knows what he's going through, and he wants to probably do it right himself. And if he's got enough doctors or enough team trainers, what have you, telling him, well, we're not comfortable with it yet, you're going to have to wait, and he'll do that. I mean, do you think? I mean, I don't think he thinks anybody should think the clock is ticking on his career. I think you get him back, and then you restart his career, and then you go from there and say, okay, I'm ready to play. I think if that's what you mean by sketchy, Luke, I think that the Vikings would definitely. I think they're going to hold him out the entire season. Just with no matter what the case is.
I agree.
Yeah, me too.
And I do think that the NFLPA could get involved, and I think that if the Vikings play it the way that is, strategically prudent for them to play it, and if the NFLPA doesn't like that, two things that I think are, reasonably likely, I think this could go to a really weird place. And when, the CBA expires, I think it could be a really, really big talking point, because you basically just said, hey, I know we have all these, really carefully negotiated rookie deals, but if you get injured, I can just kind of extend it for my own gain, and there's not much you can do about it.
Good point.
And that ties into, was that Richard Sherman recently that said, God, I forget what the wording was, but it reminded me of the Chris Cluey interview that we did in regards to, I think Sherman was reacting to the James Harden contract and what a massive deal he got, and juxtaposing that to NFL contracts, which obviously are a lot less because there's more players, but their contracts are garbage. I mean, they can be torn up at any time. He was essentially saying
also,
that the guys need
basketball's different.
Yeah, I mean, there's 11 guys on the court, but at some point, I feel like the players are going to have to strike, but I don't know if they have the ability to, based on the fact that they're kind of overextended financially. They don't have the ability to take a year or two off without their paycheck, so they have no leverage, and that's why their deals have been so bad. So I think, yeah, like you said, that's probably going to be part of it, but at some point these contracts have to change. I mean, they're not
They're really bad for the players. Although to compare it to basketball and baseball, I think is unfair because those are, rosters with 20 people on them, and a league that makes almost as much, and there's like fewer teams. There's just more money to go around with basketball players, so you just get bigger shares. I think there are a lot of reasons that justify maybe paying football players more on the whole, but I don't think comparing it to basketball is the way to make that argument.
I think the comparison is more about the validity of it is more about contracts in baseball or basketball. You still get paid if you get cut at least a certain amount, or teams have to. There's situations where there's teams paying a player who's on another team a portion of a contract that they guaranteed him because he signed a contract. The NFL doesn't have legally those aren't really contracts because you can do what they did with Adrian Peterson and backload a contract or front load it and then cut the player, and there's really.
I remember Adrian Peterson getting really mad about that, and he did kind of have a point. As much as I didn't really like his belly aching, he did have a point.
People don't like to see millionaires, and to not to get into the political side of it, but especially black millionaires complain about anything. I think Peterson isn't eloquent enough to kind of explain things the right way. So when he compared the NFL to like slavery, that was not the right way to frame things. But he did have a point. It's just not eloquently stated. I think Richard Sherman would have been a great person to kind of be the go-to guy for that because he's super smart. But his reputation is kind of sullied based on some of the stuff that he's done, and I think people just think he's a loudmouth at this point. But
he's going to run the NFLPA someday. Once he retires, he's going to run the union. Oh, yeah.
He wants to, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, either way, next week's going to be awesome. Training camp starts on what day? Tuesday? Wednesday?
Wednesday, I believe.
Seriously?
Well, it starts. That's when the veterans check in. The rookies and those people without a full year of experience are checking in 3 days early. So or come down like on Sunday and then Wednesday.
Are you going to be down there the whole time then, Joe?
The whole time, no. I'll go a few days a week and see what I can get. But yeah, I'll be popping in and out the whole time.
You be there for the Saturday scrimmage?
No, I will. That's on the 5th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be out of town for that.
So I got the packet or whatever from the Vikings PR department, and I was surprised to learn that I can basically bring like a really fancy camera for pictures and video. There's like no live streaming, which would have been kind of cool, but for people that are listening, since I'll be there on the Friday the 4th and Saturday the 5th, we're going to have a lot of like really great pictures and videos from the sidelines, which is going to be amazing.
Pictures will be great for the site.
Yeah, man. It's going to be kind of our first real take on training camp. We got a couple other people that I've hired that have written a couple articles. Nick Goodjerdy, he'll be there every day covering camp for us too. So it's going to be awesome. You guys have any parting thoughts, spicy takes? You guys want to talk about Aaron Paul's career a little bit before we go?
I have upcoming this Tuesday will be the final position battle group, which is cornerbacks. And then the Tuesday after that will be the kind of wrap-up article, which is specialists like the kicker and punter. And we'll also have a 53-man roster prediction with all this stuff in mind and trajectory and stuff and explanations. So
that's gonna be awesome.
Keep an eye out for that. And can't wait for camp.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to see what happens at the kick return position, too. I mean, we haven't talked about that a lot. We'll talk about that next week.
Yep, I will. That kick return and punt return will also be part of it. And a little blurb on Kevin McDermott, because he matters, too.
Hooray. All right, well, thanks for listening. Check us out next week. Join us on Facebook and Twitter at purplePTSD. We will have 10,000 followers on Facebook by the start of the season, the way things are going, which is going to be amazing. There'll be some news about our Monday Night Football kickoff party coming out this week, too, and some pretty amazing news in regards to some business stuff and growth and stuff for next week. So definitely tune in next week. But thanks again for listening, and this has been the Purple Journal Podcast.